Accommodation is one of the most hot topic for many international students arriving in Australia. Since the last couple of years, when the rental crisis started, it has certainly become challenging for international students to find the accommodation when they newly arrive here. So in this video, we'll try to cover the information regarding different accommodation options available, how much they generally cost, and what are some of their pros and cons as well. So if you would like to know what are some of the accommodation options available, well, this is the video you need to watch. And as I said, we'll try to cover the costs as well for these accommodation options, so it will give you an idea which ones are more affordable than the others. Without wasting much time, let's get into the video. Now, before we jump into the video, here's a quick shout out to our sponsor of this video, Amber Student. If you are an international student heading to Australia, then Amber Student is a perfect platform for you to find your accommodation. They specialize in student accommodation with a wide range of options available, from university accommodation to private accommodation, shared accommodation, and even dorms as well. And what make Amber Students stand out from others is their personalized support. You can search accommodation based on your budget, the location, and your lifestyle needs. And not only search, but you can also look through the images and the videos of the accommodation that you might like to book before arriving in Australia. And these properties are verified properties, which means you will get what you see on those images and videos. And Amber Student has been our partner for the last few years now, and many international students have booked their accommodation through Amber Student in the past, and none of them ever actually have complained about it, which is why we love working with Amber Student as well. And their dedicated team is there to help you with every step on the way, which makes your transition to Australia as smooth as possible. So if you are still looking for that accommodation, I highly recommend you to check Amber Student. The link will be in the description box below. So go and check those properties after watching this video, and hopefully you find one that matches your needs. And thanks Amber Student for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back into the video. So the first accommodation type we have on our list is university or student accommodation. Now, university accommodation, as it sounds, is on-campus student accommodation. It could be dorms, student apartments, student villages, or even shared accommodation. Now, most of the time, the university or student accommodations are managed by universities themselves, but these days, many privately owned organizations also run these student apartments and student accommodations. The best part of living in these university or student accommodation is that most of them are close to the university campus, which means it will take less time to reach your university campus for your studies. It also will mean that you will spend less money on your transportation cost, and because you're living in a student accommodation or university accommodation, the more likely chances that you will meet many other students, including the locals. So it's a great way to meet new people who are also students just like yourself. And some of these university accommodations also provide meals and utility bills included in the price itself. So whatever price you're paying, sometimes that include the meals and also your utility bills like electricity, internet, water, gas, and so on. Now, in terms of some of the drawbacks of a university accommodation or student accommodation, they tend to be a little bit on the expensive side, which means you will be shelling out some extra dollars out of your pocket, especially when it's compared with other accommodation types available. And in terms of contracts, these university accommodation or student accommodations are usually less flexible, as you will need to usually sign up for at least for a specific term or specific length of a time frame. And getting out of those contracts may mean that you may have to pay some extra money for that. Another drawback could be that as you have to share the accommodation, you'll have a less privacy. As in case of some university accommodations and some student accommodations, you may have to share it with other people. So that could lead to some privacy concerns. But that being said, the university accommodation or student accommodations usually also provide some additional benefits as well, such as gym facilities, swimming, sauna, and some other activities that they provide with these accommodations. So when booking this student accommodation or university accommodation, you will need to consider what sort of facilities are available, what sort of length of contract that you are signing up for, and if the meals or utility bills are also included. As I said, most likely they are going to be close to the university campus, so you will save some money on transport as well. In terms of the cost, of course, the cost will vary depending upon the type of accommodation, the location, and if it's in the city or in the suburban area or in a regional town. To give you a bit of an idea, the average cost range can be anywhere from $170 per week to $450 per week. Of course, as I said, there are many factors that come into play. These are just average costs. It obviously can vary depending upon the factors that I just mentioned. But hopefully it gave you an idea on how much it might cost you for your university or student accommodation. Alright, moving on to our next accommodation type, which is shared private accommodation. Now, shared accommodation is the most popular accommodation type for international students here in Australia. Basically, as the name suggests, it's a shared accommodation, which means you will be living with other people in the house. It could be that you might be sharing the house with some other people. So let's say if it's a 4-bedroom house, there are 4 people sharing it with one person having each bedroom. Or some people even like to share their room. So maybe it's a case that it's a 2-bedroom apartment and there are 4 students living in with 2 in each room, which means that you might be sharing it with other people. You might wonder why people will like to do that. Obviously, the first thing that comes in mind is the cost, as shared accommodation is one of the most affordable option when it comes to finding an accommodation here in Australia. And that's the reason why it's most popular one as well. And the reason being quite simple, that the rent and the utility bills are shared among the housemates. So whatever the total bill of the rent is, plus all the utility bills during the month, that will add up and will be divided by the number of people living there. Of course, the division of these expenses will vary depending upon the arrangements you have. For example, if it's a 2-bedroom apartment and if one person is living in 1 bedroom and there are 2 people sharing the other bedroom, of course the split has to be accordingly. But as I said, it is one of the most affordable option. That's why many people choose to do that. Now again, as you will be sharing it with other people, it's a great way to meet new people and build your support network in a new country, which is very important. Many people like to live with the people from their own home country as well, while some choose to live with people from other countries. Whichever way you choose, that's fine, but usually you have a choice to do so, whether you want to share accommodation with people from your home country or with people from other countries, or maybe even with locals. And these accommodations will have a less restrictions as compared to the university or a student accommodation, as university or student accommodations usually will have restrictions regarding the visitors and the party time and other things. Again, with the negatives or the drawbacks of this shared accommodation is regarding the privacy, especially if you don't know these people that well, as you might be sharing an accommodation or room with some strangers, so that could make it a little bit difficult in terms of privacy. But some people choose these shared accommodation purposely with their friends, so that becomes less of a privacy concern in that case. Another negative is regarding the shared spaces and the shared common area. When you are sharing it with other people, it can get a bit messy or crowded at times. So let's say you are sharing a kitchen or a bathroom, and if other people have to use it at the same time, then it might create some issues. But personally speaking, I think one of the most difficult part is to find the right compatible housemates. The housemates that you will get along really well with. Although it might be cheaper in terms of the dollar value, but sometimes the hassle, the stress of living with other people or with housemates can be quite a bit of challenge in itself. So that is the reason why many people only choose to live with either fewer people or they try to get their own private accommodation. But hey, as a student life, you may have to do some sacrifices, and that could be the part of living in that shared accommodation. Now the average cost range again will vary here, but as I mentioned earlier, it's usually on a cheaper side. So you could be looking anywhere from $150 per week to $250 per week. Again, depending upon those locations and other factors that I mentioned. Some might work out to be a bit cheaper, while other might be a bit more expensive. But in this case, the utility bills are usually shared, so you need to be mindful for that as well. Now, the third option we have available for accommodations is the short-term accommodation. Now, this type of accommodation is ideal for students who are looking for a temporary place while they look for their long-term accommodation. So as the name suggests, the short-term accommodation, you might book it for the few days or few weeks before you find your long-term accommodation. So some of those options includes things like hotels, Airbnbs, or some other private rentals, but they are offered for a short-term period. Now, the good thing about these sort of accommodation types is that it's flexible, it's convenient, there are no long-term contracts or bookings you need to make. You can book it as you go along. You can book it for a few days or few weeks, and they're usually easy to book as well. There are not many contracts that you have to sign up for. As long as you pay for it, you can get that quickly enough. Again, most of these things you can book online, so that makes it easier while you look for your long-term accommodation. If you need just a place to stay in, you can do it through online platforms. Again, best for those students who are looking for their long-term accommodation. Before they get that, it's a temporary place to stay for them. The biggest negative thing will be the pricing. It's likely that will be more expensive than other range of accommodation options available. And sometimes during peak seasons or in certain areas of the city, there may be some limited availability. So sometimes there may be issues regarding booking those accommodations. And during peak season, they can be really expensive as well. In terms of the cost, you are looking at least $200 to $500 per week for these sort of accommodations, and it tends to be usually on the higher side than the lower one. The fourth option on our list is hostels. Not hotels, but hostels. So these are another budget-friendly accommodations for students and backpackers. Now in this case, often the rooms are shared and the communal space like kitchen area, bathrooms are shared with other people. And there are many hostels that cater to students, backpackers and other young travelers, as they offer very lively and social environment in these hostels. Now in terms of the positives, again, they are usually cheaper than the short-term accommodations. They're definitely not as fancy as some other short-term accommodations like hotels, but it's a great place to start if you just want to hang around for a few days to find a long-term accommodation. It is a great place to meet new friends and travelers from all around the world, as many young travelers and backpackers use hostels as their main accommodation type. Obviously, students use them as well. However, one of the biggest concerns that many people have is regarding the safety. Since you could be sharing a room with 1, 2, or maybe even 3 people, that doesn't suit obviously everyone. It's not just a privacy concern, but also the safety concern for many young travelers and many students out there. Another drawback is usually the facilities are very basic and you have to share it with other people, so they may not be as comfortable as the other type of accommodations that we have on our list. And because it can be noisy and crowded at times, it might be difficult for students to focus on their studies, as they may be young travelers or backpackers who would like to party instead of studying over there. But again, it's an option for students who might need to book something cheap and quick and only for a few days, and it's worth considering this option for those students. Now the cost range again will vary, can be $150 to $300 per week, depending upon the location and type of shared arrangements that you have. And this cost that I'm giving you here is just for one bed in a dormitory. Obviously, if you are going to have a private room in these hostels, the cost will be more. And last but not the least on our list we have is homestays. Now this is a completely different type of accommodation option, and it's definitely something unique. Now homestay involves living with local Australian family. So the family will provide you with the room, with the meals, and also provide you with the support to help you settle into Australian environment and culture. So one of the positive things will be that you will experience Australian lifestyle and Australian culture firsthand. And obviously it's a great experience, not only for you to understand how the Australians live, but also to improve your language skills as well. Usually in a homestay arrangement, meals and utility bills are included, which is obviously great. And for those students who are looking for a family-like environment in a country which is new to them, is definitely a great option. Now in terms of the limitations, first one obviously will be the house rules. Now if you're going to live in a homestay accommodation, you will have to follow the rules of that family that you're living with, and it may not be as convenient if you're looking for independent or flexible sort of environment. And there could be privacy concerns also, as you will be living in someone else's house. Now in terms of the cost, it could be on the bit of expensive side as well. On an average, it can be anywhere from $220 to $300 per week, but sometimes, as I mentioned, it might include meals and utility bills as well. Before we end the video, here are a few other things that I suggest you to consider before looking for these accommodation options. Obviously, the first and the most important one is location, location, location. It goes without saying you need to find an accommodation that is at least close to either your university or your possible workplace. Obviously, when you first arrive in Australia, you don't know where you're going to work. So ideally, if you can find something closer to your university, that will help you to save some money in terms of your transport. If it's not close to university, at least try to find it close enough to public transport where you can catch the bus or train and go to your university without much of hassle. Another thing would be the budget. Make sure to look for options that fits within your budget, and that's why it's important for you to know about what sort of features or benefits or facilities are being provided by these accommodation options. Sometimes it might be looking a little bit expensive, but maybe there are some other additional facilities that are available that you can take advantage of, which may not be available with other accommodation options, and it may sometimes work out even cheaper. Also important for you when you're signing up for any lease, it's important to understand what are the terms and conditions of that lease is. For example, how long the lease will need to be, what sort of deposits that you need to give. There is a thing called a bond, which you will need to pay usually at the start of any accommodation, especially for the long-term accommodation options, and what are the cancellation policies as well. And last but not the least, it's the safety. It's very important to check the reviews and the photos of the place that you are going to book so that you're not getting scammed. A lot of time what happens is you see these images on different platforms like Gumtree and on Facebook Marketplace, and you go to these places in real life and the house does not look anything like what they have shown in the photos. I've personally known many people who have gone through this themselves. And also, don't give deposits to unknown people who are asking some money from Facebook or through Gumtree. Many people are out there looking to do these sort of scams for people who are new to this country. And if you are going to meet someone for looking at the property, I suggest you to go during the daytime, and if you can, bring along a friend with you to see this property. This is specifically for your physical safety. And obviously that is the reason why we suggest you to have a look at the platform like Amber Student, where you get all these properties which are verified and you can book it even before coming to Australia. So if you would like to book through them, please check the link in the description box below, where you can search through and find and book them before arriving here. Now, for those students who are planning to arrive in Australia in 2025, I highly recommend you to watch this video here, where we talk about how to prepare yourself for traveling to Australia in 2025. What are the things you need to do before arriving here? Quite a detailed video covering a lot of information, so highly recommend you to check it out. So click that video there and I'll see you there.